Good evening, everyone. For those that I haven't met before, my name's Eric Nordberg. I'm the Dean of the Library here at UT Martin. So glad to see a big audience, but I expected nothing less when we have such an interesting speaker this evening, a beloved member of our faculty, certainly. Tonight's event's a little bit different, but before we get to that, a couple of just housekeeping rules. If you haven't been in this space before, restrooms are down toward the end, and if there's an emergency exit just around the corner here. Thank you so much for coming in person, also for people that may be joining us over the live stream. If you saw an announcement of this event, that live stream link that we included will also be the same link that you can use to watch the recording of this event. So if other people weren't able to attend, you can certainly share that onto them. It's guaranteed to be a very interesting presentation tonight. We have one more event in our UT Martin Research Series. That will be on December the 10th. I know that many of the students in the space here are going to be busy that day. It's the Tuesday of finals week. But we always try to do an event at the end of the season that we take downtown that's more oriented towards the public. So we're actually going to be at the Martin Public Library. And one of our librarians, John Ledoux, Dr. John Ledoux, who is our information literacy librarian, will be giving a presentation on one of his favorite topics. Very timely. It'll be about how corporate dollars control media. And so if you're interested to know about that topic, please join us downtown. That'll be actually at 6:30 on Tuesday, December 10th at the Martin Public Library. The UT Martin Research Series is an attempt that we have to talk about how our faculty members undertake and engage in research across the curriculum here. As most people know, UT Martin is largely known as a teaching institution, and we have great teachers that do all sorts of different coursework here, but all of our faculty are also required to do various types of research. And so this series is hopefully trying to highlight that work that's done. And in particular, for an event like tonight, I think a lot of people know faculty member in other departments on this campus, scientists who do experiments, publish articles in journals, PDFs that you'll find when you do a search on databases. We know that we've got history and other faculty on campus whose output tends to be more in a book form, a printed monograph. But I guess the questions that we often have are, how do we assess an artist? How do we assess a musician? How do we assess people that maybe don't produce a PDF that's in a journal online? And so tonight's discussion is going to kind of touch on a few of those things. We decided we're going to mix things up a little bit, and rather than having a podium here where our speaker is just going to simply give you a lecture, we're actually going to have a little sit down. And in fact, I was thinking when I was setting this up that maybe it was going to be like the old TV show, This Is Your Life, where we'd open a big book and we'd flip through the pages and we'd talk about Jason Stout's life. But with that, what we're going to do is take us into the digital age, and we're going to use a few screens here. So my very first question, and first of all, let's put our hands together and welcome Jason Stout.
Thank you.
So I've known Jason for pretty much all 4 of the years that I've been here, but actually I know him more because he collects cigar boxes, but that's another story maybe we get into in the Q&A. But I guess I would start by just saying, okay, how does one become an artist? When you're a kid, what do? You see something and you draw it, or you get exposed to something? Tell us a little bit about your inspiration.
Well, I'll go through some pictures here because, I spend a lot of time asking my students about probably way too many questions, especially the first semester, about who they are, where they're from, and what they're into. And usually they don't like to talk about that too much, but I've got some general things here about what I like about being an artist. And some of this stuff happened when I was a kid, and some of this is stuff that I come to realize now. And part of it is that you don't have to have a whole lot of stuff to make great art. It's a very simple kind of like tool set that you can have with a piece of paper, a pen, or anything else. When I was a kid, with how we grew up, and I'll go into that a little bit, it's amazing. We didn't have the technological distractions that there are now. We didn't have cell phones, computers, and any of that stuff. So we were right in the middle of the kind of like analog to digital. I was born in 1977, so creativity was a big part of like how you kind of made time pass. And if you were playing a game and you didn't have a certain part of the game, you had to make up one of the things that you had to have to finish the game. And, if you were telling a story, and you didn't have the book, you might actually sit down and like draw a part of the book, and that might turn into another book. So that's one thing I like a lot. The other thing too is, and I think this is part of, I talk a lot about being a Southern artist, is that we're storytellers. And I've always really enjoyed telling stories and sharing stories. There's a whole group of people over there that are my friends and stuff that showed up and surprised me that we're not going to tell any of those stories tonight for sure. But we're going to tell other stories.
There's going to be a Q&A section at the end, so we can
well,
get
sure,
to those
sure.
stories
And
as well.
And I think it's a different priority now because so much of everything when people exist and live now, it's immediately documented. Oh, this is a big moment, let's document it. This is a big moment, let's take a picture, let's take a video. And that wasn't the case. When I grew up, you had to be around the thing or you had to be there to experience it. So a part of what I like doing in picture making and drawing and painting is telling stories. So this is kind of how I grew up, and I'll kind of like paint a picture of me as a kid. Actually, not much has changed. I still have a giant head towards my body, and I still like kind of being around people that I like and being entertaining and kind of joking. So this is a birthday party when I was like 5 or 6. And the little turd there in the foreground is my sister turning around, standing on the camera. And this is my sister and my mom here. And my dad left when we were like 2 or 3. So we spent a lot of time early on before my mom was remarried, just me and my sister and my mom. And we didn't have a lot of stuff. She was, I think, 22 with 2 kids when he left. So we had to make do with like a lot of just kind of basic stuff. And a lot of things was playing outside, using your imagination, making up games, making up things like that. And, that really went through a lot of our childhood. We did stuff like that. So this is us at the playground that's over at the middle school where my son goes now. And one of the things I can say is when I got into school is that art was a really big part of the curriculum, starting out as early as like 2nd grade. So we just had the thing, I think a couple months ago, for Harold Connor. And his wife, Miss Florence, was my 2nd grade teacher. And the very first thing that we did was a word bank thing that had a picture, and you had to draw the whole illustration out of the book and then write the words. And so it was connecting art with learning immediately. And then my 4th grade teacher, Miss Donna Sinclair, is actually here tonight.
Where is she? Wait a minute, let's see.
Where's Miss Donna at? She's here, right there in the front row.
This is your fault, by the way, I guess, in a way. So.
She incorporated and encouraged all sorts of art stuff. I remember by the time I was in 4th grade, I was a really kind of awkward kid. I liked sports, and I liked being goofy, and I liked being funny, but I liked horror movies. And so I would bring horror movie posters and put them on my desk, and Miss Donna would come over and you got to take the Texas Chainsaw Massacre poster off the side of your desk. And I said, why? She goes, I don't have a problem with it, but Kendi's crying. And so we would have to do stuff like that. But I was kind of getting lost in and that's a weird age of trying to figure out who you are. But one of the things she had me doing, she's like, well, you like to draw, Jason. Why don't you draw this? So we had a social studies project coming up, and she gave me a thing, and I drew a map that had like a plateau and a taiga, and it was like one of these geographical kind of map things, and you would put all the different terms on the map. And she said, well, this is a really great job. And she used that for the worksheet that she handed out to everybody. And so for me, I learned really early on that art has a way of elevating, who you are and what you are, and that it is important. Another story, and I tell this one to my students a lot, is that there was one time a coloring book competition, I think this was in 2nd or 3rd grade, where you had to color in a Care Bear standard coloring book sheet. And I was doing my Care Bear, and my sister had showed me this thing where if you press really hard against the shapes, the color will actually get deeper or stronger, and then you can blend off that and everything will look better. And I was doing my kind of blend, but I got to the background, and I had all this background to cover, but I only had the 6-pack crayon, and I looked over, and the girl next to me had the 64-pack. So I ever so slightly reached over and stole her periwinkle blue, and I finished the background, and that won for my class. And that meant that I got to miss school one day and go to Santa's Village. So for me, it was like, this kind of thing of power. I was like, this is really something. So it was something that I paid attention to. And this is my Uncle Johnny, who passed away a couple years ago. But my Uncle Johnny was like one of my favorite storytellers of all time. And he just had a lot of stories. And you can see, actually, as I said, we look a lot alike. But that's him with my son, Grayson. But when I was a kid, his stories were just magical and amazing. So when I started making art, one of the things that I wanted to do is be able to be a storyteller like him and connect the things. But I could never tell a story quite as good as he would. He's a real funny guy. But I wanted to be able to do it in pictures. And, I had a really great mom who actually passed away the first year I was teaching here. But, my mom supported my art even though she didn't always get or understand every part of it. But she was also like always really, really hard and strict about it and trying to be like, you've got to get better, you've got to do this. And so I think part of her personal drive of having to be a single mom at the age she was with pushing us. And, my sister was a really great student. I was not a great student. I was smart, but I was not disciplined enough to be a good student. But my sister was kind of a really great example of, having the drive and the passion and the direction to be a good student. And of course, my mom just loved my sister, and she loved me too. But she was also like, Jason, you're not lazy, but you're disinterested in certain things. So she always kind of worked really hard on me to get me focused. And when she passed, her sister, which is my Aunt Kimiko, has always really been a really big supporter of mine too. And she bought paintings and drawings for me as early as high school. And every time she can make a show, she still does. And she posts my art online. Everybody's got that family member that posts all the art they made when they were 16 and 17 that they don't want anybody to see. She's like that person. And that's my grandmother over there. And my grandmother was really, really into art and like painting and stuff. And over here on the right is my stepdad. And my mom had remarried when we were around, 8 or 9. And I played around here growing up. Sports was the big thing. It was the only thing you could kind of do to kind of get attention. And the arts really weren't that big. I think the closest thing that we had that was a big art thing was in the little lot that's on the corner there of University of Maine was a cleaners. And on the side of that, they would paint, Coca-Cola would come in and paint a big Coca-Cola mural, and they would list the UTM football schedule on the side of it. And so, like, for me, that was a fascinating thing because you would go by it every day. It was big, and it was kind of gorgeous. And the other thing you would see is because we have Illinois Railroad that would come through, when the train cars would come, you'd stop at a train, they would come through Chicago first, and they had all this great graffiti on it. So for me, the thing that I saw the most were like advertising murals and like train graffiti. And anyway, I'm kind of getting off topic, but sports was the big thing. So I played basketball and football, but about my sophomore year of high school, I realized like I'm not going to be a great athlete. And the real reason why I like playing any of this stuff is because I like being with my friends. And I had to figure out something to do because I was 2 years away from going to college. But at that time, they didn't think I was going to college, and I wasn't sure I was going to either. And I started kind of picking up my art and doing it again. And my stepdad, who's a paint contractor, said, if you're really interested in doing this, you got to let me know. And he said, I said, I think I want to do this because if it's not this, I don't know what it is. And he said, well, come on. And like any good stepfather, he took me right to Walmart, and he said, buy everything you need right now to keep you out of trouble, which was, in 1993 or 4, it was about $130, which is, I wouldn't even buy you a book now, but I mean, it was a lot. So, and one of the big driving factors too is my sister. My sister has always been a really big supportive person, and this is the thing my sister does where she goes to a museum and she sends me a picture of a Van Gogh and she always smiles by it. And then when I'm by a painting, I try to imitate the person in the painting. So that's why she's smiling, and I have this really kind of derpy, stupid face there.
So you got all these people that are influencing you as a kid.
Yeah.
Do people go to college to learn art? I mean, is that a thing?
I think you learn how to be a professional, and I think you have to have the ingredients there. But, I mean, here's the thing. We get a lot of talented kids here. I'll tell them at the beginning that talent is only the potential for success. And, that can be said about a lot of things. But I think what we're trying to teach them how to do is, like, how to hone your talents, how to organize your time, how to, like, maximize your resources. Because, our kids are great, but a lot of our kids come in, they just get here. They don't have a ton of money, and they've maybe had 1 year of high school art, which is all I had. I bring this picture up of my sister to tell, like, 2 stories where I really figured out that I could go to college and do art because I really didn't know what the path was because I wasn't a great student. I just didn't spend a lot of time doing it. There was a teacher at our high school named Carol Linson. She saw me drawing, and you're a historian, so you'll like this story. And she said, well, Jason, you draw a lot. You really need someone to help guide you or mentor you. And I said, well, I don't know who that would be. And she said, I have a friend named Alchi Vandenberg. And those of you that know any history about UTM, Alchi Vandenberg was the first real art professor teacher. She was actually, this is when, and Dr. Bird's here, when art was in home ec, right? And so she did, painting, ceramics, all the stuff. And so I called this lady on the phone, and at that time, Alchi was almost 70, and here I am like a 16-year-old kid. And I said, Carol Lynson told me to call you that you might give art lessons. And she said, I'm retired. I have no interest in teaching anyone anymore. And I said, okay. And she said, but I'll tell you what, you're probably not that good, but if you'll come over on Saturday, we'll look at what you have and we can hang out and talk about it. And that was good enough because I didn't really have, other friends that did art. My friends loved my art, but I didn't have any peers that did it. So I went over there and met with her, and I showed her some of my stuff, and she goes, look, you're all right. I said, okay, good. She goes, I don't want to teach you, but why don't you come over every Saturday and we'll draw or we'll paint together. And every Saturday really turned into about every other Saturday because of some of her health stuff. But, I would go Saturday mornings and spend 2 hours with, at that time, it sounds strange, a 68, 70-year-old lady, and we would listen to Mahalia Jackson and talk about Rembrandt and draw perspective blocks. And, to me, it was pretty great. And so when I started to get ready to go to college, my sister was already at the university. She goes, well, look, Memphis College of Art, which is no longer here, has a college art day. And what you do is you come in and you bring all this stuff, and you bring a portfolio of what you bring, and you go around and you talk to the schools, and they give you scholarships they offer, and they tell you what you need to do. And I said, man, this is great. So we had a librarian at the time, Miss King, and I told her about this I need to go to, and she said, well, Jason, I got a portfolio case for you. So she goes in the back and she pulls out, and you'll know this because she's a librarian, one of these big 1970s cardboard faux wood grain portfolio things that used to hold those big displays. And she pulled it out, and it just dust flew everywhere. I was like, God, how long have you had this thing? She goes, you carry this and put your art in it. This thing is a Sherman tank. I said, okay, Miss King. So we go to Memphis College of Art. My sister takes me and she drops me off. And, it's just typical Christian. Good luck, Bubsy. I said, thanks. I go in there, and I'm a junior high school, and I start going, and everything's wrong. I don't have drawings from life, too many drawings from photographs. You need to work on your color. I'm just getting, destroyed at every school that I go to. That this is not what we're looking for. This is not what we're looking for. After about 2 hours of this, I'm feeling about as defeated as you can feel. And as I'm walking, that Sherman tank of a portfolio case explodes, and all of my art falls out on the floor. And to make matters worse, everybody else who had been doing what the schools want, none of them stop, and it's just like a traffic meet over everything that I've made.
Oh, no.
So I start walking out, and I have that big, sad, 80s movie heavy tear coming out of my eye. My sister's there. She goes, how'd it go? I was like, and I just have a mountain of stuff. I look like Pigpen. I'm just like a rolling ball of dust. And so she takes me to Red Lobster, which was my cheer-up place. I know Red Lobster's what it is now, but you got to remember this is 1994. And I'm just telling her about it, and she just looked at me in the face, and she goes, you can sit here and cry in your cheddar biscuit, or you've got a year. This is my sister, if you know her. You've got a year. Make everything they told you to make. Get to work. It's a learning experience. You can go back next year, and you own this thing. In so many words. So I got that biscuit. It was a little salty because I'd been crying it, but I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I can come back next year. And like, yeah. And she's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I can do it. And I did. I went to work making life drawings. I probably had 100 drawings of my stepdad asleep in his recliner, in his underwear when he got off work because he was still. You had to have drawings of people and things. And I just worked and did all the stuff. And so the next year when I went back, it went great. And I started getting offers from school and stuff. And you got to remember that we were first generation college. And so we start kind of looking at this stuff. And my mom's like, these schools are great, but we don't have the money for you to get here. You're going to have to take loans. And some of the loans are so crazy. Like, even if you were getting so much money up front, there's no way it would work for 4 years. So before I had decided where to go, I went to a summer art camp. And it was kind of like a performance camp. And Murray State at the time would actually hand out scholarships at this camp. I didn't know this. And so Dale Hayes is the guy that ran the drawing camp there. And we were there, and at the end of the week, he said, Jason, you just absolutely killed it here. It'd be like how a basketball camp is now. They come and schools offer you. And he said, why don't you come here? You haven't picked a school yet, have you? I said, I haven't picked it yet. He goes, why don't you come here? And he goes, we'll give you, $1,000 your first year, and that'll knock down your tuition. We'll give you in-state. And so I went there for 2 years until I finished. So this is Dale just had a show at Paducah School of Arts, and that's my son Grayson standing next to Dale. And I was like, Grayson, this was my drawing teacher. And what I mean drawing teacher, I mean like in one semester, I think my kids make 10 finished drawings. I probably made 100 drawings that semester. I mean, it was every week just rep. And it was at 7:30 in the morning. So like kids now have a hard time at 9 o'clock class. This class was at 7:30. And this is when I took some of my students. So you look there, there's a without a mustache Clay Palmer there in the middle. which he looks like Michael Cera, doesn't he? I mean, there he is. And the Kelly twins, who were infamous students of mine when they were here. But so I was at Murray, and one of the things, I'll show this picture, and I'll speed some of this up because I know I'm kind of taking a little bit of time setting the table here, but one of the things I promised myself when I was at Murray, I said, one day when I'm a big artist, I'm going to come back in the Clary Eagle Gallery, and I'm going to be the person that has a solo show because it's such a big, beautiful space. And so this is my show there 2 years ago that I got, and we'll look at that. But, after 2 years there, my scholarship kind of ran out, and I had to work. I had to get money, and so I needed to come back home and save a little money. And to be honest, my friends were here, so every weekend they were coming up to see me. I was coming to see them, and I really missed my friends, and we were all real close together. But I came back to UTM so I could come here and finish up, and then work with my stepdad. And so these are some really odd, weird paintings that I'd made. This is my very first show at UTM here. Handsome little guy there, right? Yeah, nice hair. And then at the time, before LSA, we had Visual Arts Society. This is VAS. So this is a big group picture of us. And the program was really small then, which means you kind of knew everybody. You knew all the theater people. You knew what dance people we had and the art people together. And so that's our art group right there. And there's about 20 people. LSA, our student group now, has like 50 people. But that's really almost all the art majors at the time, too. So that's kind of how small it is. And this is us going bowling and hanging out. This is funny. You can see me smoking in the bowling alley there. It's a terrible example. But and there's a newly hired Dr. Carol Eckert in the back that actually took us and was supervising us. And it was pretty awesome. And these are like some shows that I did in undergraduate. Now, it's a little bit different now because it's so easy to find shows and exhibits. Back then, you were dependent on the university getting something mailed into you and somebody pinning something up on a wall and you walking by and being the first one to grab it so you would know about the opportunity. And the library, of course, too, would have magazines back here, and you would look in the back and try to find call for entries. Now you can do it online. You can find out 200 shows in a day dinner if you want to. Back then it was hard. So this is me at a show at Fisk University in Nashville that was like a Art of the Crossroads show, and it was about young student artists, and apparently everybody that was in the show was from Fisk and me. And so when I walked in, they're like, hey, there he is. I was like, hey, how you doing? But it was a really great show. And what I don't have a picture of is the guy that I got to hang out with that night and meet, which is another young artist, is a guy named Jamal Sheets. He actually is like one of their main directors at Fisk University now. So he went back and worked for the university they did. And this is my first kind of best of show. This is 2001, a painting I did called Night at the Bar. So we're getting into, and we had Art of the 21st Century. My wife loves this picture, by the way. This is Art of the 21st Century, and there's my friend Lane Last, and Lane was one of the guys that spearheaded this. So this is actually a picture of the second one. We know artists of the 21st century now as bellwethers, right? And so I had won Best of Show with the first one, and had won second or third for my painting in this one. And so, of course, when I'd celebrate, this is, the pacer at the time, and this is me and my wife we called this prom night because we'd got all dressed up, and we talked about how terrible our proms were, so we kind of went out and took pictures with the newspaper. So when I got done, I had to figure out what I was going to do next, and I was really kind of terrified. And one of the things that Lane did when I was an undergraduate towards the end is he goes, you know what, you need to think about grad school. And I told this story at his last retirement thing when he got to come on campus, and I just looked at him and I said, I have no idea how to do what you're talking about. He said, it's like applying to undergraduate, but you need to look at school. He told me, he spent time with me. He told me everything to look for. He talked about places, and he said, look at teachers, look at people, because you're going to be working with them. So don't worry about place, look at the people. And he said, you can do this. You can really do this. And so I started going through, and I started making lists of schools. And, I had Memphis and a school in Arkansas, and I had Memphis because my sister was still there. I was close. And, I knew if I got in trouble, and I'm not, I wasn't a good driver, still not a great driver. I knew that if I got in trouble, well, Christy will just come pick me up. And, you have to use your siblings. And we were all set. I started getting acceptance letters, and I was all set to go to the University of Memphis. And I went out to dinner with my sister and my mom, and we got back to my mom's house, and there was a call in the answer machine, and it said, this is Connie Lowe from the University of Texas San Antonio. Jason, you're accepted. We want you to come to school here. I had done some research, and Fran Colpett taught there, and I'd looked at Connie's work. Again, they had a great bunch of faculty. But San Antonio was 12 hours away for somebody who did not like to drive and really wasn't comfortable driving in an hour radius. Plus also, I lived in Murray and Martin, and San Antonio is 2 million people. Murray and Martin's very small. And we listened to that message. My mom looked me right in the face. She goes, "You've got to go." And I said, "You're crazy." And she goes, "You'll get over there. You'll fit in. You'd almost get chills thinking about it." She goes, "You'll land on your feet. You'll be fine." And I said, "Well, what's wrong?" And she goes, "Well, get one of your friends to haul your truck down there and just get in and get on the ground and do what you do." And she goes, "I'll help you, whatever I can." And so I called and say I accept. And so I went down there. And so this is from when I started at UTSA. And I don't have any of these paintings anymore, so I haven't seen these paintings in years till I went through the pictures. So there's two of my paintings on the left with two of my friends holding them because they always said that your paintings need legs. And so there's that. And this is actually what my studio looked like at UTSA. So
now when you went down there, what was your intention? Just to learn more? I mean, for folks that don't know, in higher education,
Okay.
usually the road to teaching at the university is that you have a PhD. Because in most disciplines, the PhD is considered what they call the terminal degree. But in the arts, the master's degree is a terminal degree, as it is in library science. Were you thinking that you wanted to be a professor at that time? Or?
No.
Okay.
Here's what I knew. When I was in school, I worked construction and sheetrock with my dad. The one thing I knew is I did not want to do sheetrock anymore. And I knew that.
So you began with a list of things you didn't want to do.
Well, I think it comes back to I got more engaged academically as it got harder. Usually it's the reverse. When something's easy, you love it, and when it gets harder, you like it less. I was the exact opposite because as I went up, they were talking about and interested in things I was talking about. When I went to Murray State for the first time, I was terrible in high school English. The first two people I met at Murray State, we sat outside for 3 hours smoking cigarettes, talking about David Lynch's Blue Velvet. And I was like, oh, these are my people. I knew immediately that this is where I want to be. So I thought grad school would be an extension of that. I would be around better artists, and I would at least be a better artist, and I would be around other intellectuals. And it was a city that was connected to Tennessee history. People say, the difference between Texas and Tennessee, which one's the true big orange? I said, you just have to remember that Texas is actually a state founded by Tennesseans, and that usually puts them in check. So I knew I wanted to go down there, and I just thought of it, to be honest, and as dumb as it sounds, this will be some kind of grand adventure. I will either really, really flop or I will thrive, but I hope to come out of it with experience and to be a better artist. And Connie Lowe, who's the lady, that's the second lady on the left there, this was actually my graduate committee. The first three people they used to call the Three Furies. And if you know this from Greek tragedy, it's you did not have the Three Furies on your graduate committee because they would just tear you to shreds. And that's exactly who I want. The last guy's Ron Binks, who's a guy that spent a lot of time with me in my painting studio. But I TA'd with Connie, and you did a thing where you had to compete your first semester to pass your first semester review, and then if you did really good, she would pick first TA, and the first TA spot meant you had the best semester. I mean, basically, in some kind of sense, and so she said, you're my first TA pick, which also means when you finish with me, you can start teaching courses on record for us. Okay. And the main back part of that was, and getting paid. Because I was taking and getting paid. I was spending a lot of money to go here. I wasn't scholarship the first year. I got in, but it wasn't until my second year that I got a scholarship so they could keep me. Because I was talking, I was like, I don't know if I can, pull this off. It's pretty tight. And they figured out a way and got me a scholarship and and then after I did my first class, she said, you're really good at teaching. I was like, why do you say that? She goes, I have a lot of TAs. She goes, you went around and walked up to students and you just told them how to fix their paintings with what you thought, with what they were doing. She goes, that's it. Add a little research in there, reference some artists. If you have that comfortability and ease, that's what it is. I was like, wow. So I just started thinking about it more, and I actually really enjoyed TAing for her. She was a strict professional and had me run a lot of printing for her and doing stuff like that, but that's how you learn. And because she was so tight of a teacher, she always had this thing. She goes, in any class, Jason, you have to start really tight, and then you can loosen up. She goes, you can't ever start loose and tighten up. And it's something that always stuck with me. She goes, because you'll never get them back. So, you kind of give them a little bit more room as they're getting better. But these were the kind of paintings I was making in grad school, and they were all about Southern mythology and identity and Southern vice and, the kind of pill drug culture that was going on mixed with battles. You got to remember this was Gulf War time. This is second, this is Bush Jr. here. So, It's a mix of like surrealism, political identity, and like ghost and spirit and storytelling and stuff like that. And these are some illustrations that were in the San Antonio Current, which was the big meeting. So when I graduated and I got done, my friend called me one morning. He woke up. He said, "You've got to go to the newsstand. You're on the cover of the San Antonio Current." And I said, "Which painting?" He goes, "That one with the hillbilly ghost holding the pig." And so the San Antonio Current's like the Nashville Flyer, the Memphis scene. So we went down to Books A Million. And my girlfriend, who's in another picture, who's my wife now, she goes, "Get up, let's go to Books A Million," because that's how she talks. And so we drove down there, and I said, "I don't want." So I was looking at it. She goes, "Don't just stand there, grab 20." And so she just starts picking them up, and we're walking. And so for me, that was like, it sounds like I came to this city. Was by no point biggest or famous or really known yet, but I'd had a really good graduate show. I'd sold like 12 or 13 paintings at my graduate show. My friends, I'll talk about a lot. There are a lot of the pictures. Drove all the way from Tennessee, came to my graduate show, stayed 2 days. We watched a real heartbreaking Tennessee-Auburn game where Tennessee kind of lost the SEC championship in that game. But my friends have always been there for me, and that's the thing in between all this is when you're unsure and you're in between these big moments and you're doubting yourself or you don't have resources, that's the one thing I can say is like your community of your friends around you, and I'm talking about my non-artist friends, my family, my friends, always pick me up if I flew in, stay over here, I'm running low on hey, let's go eat. I had great friends that took care of me in all this, so, but there's some illustrations. And one of the things I did too is I found a gallery there, and this is Dana Reed REM Gallery, and I showed with this gallery from the time I got out of grad school up until the pandemic when she retired and closed in 2019. So every 2 years we would go to San Antonio and do a solo exhibit.
Nice.
So, and these are some of my friends from grad school, and they would try to come and meet up every year, and we would have a big reunion. And we were in San Antonio. It was 2015, and I get a call, and it was on Amanda's phone, and because I didn't have a cell phone at the time, I just used a studio phone. I'm too cheap. And Amanda said, I think Doug Cook called you. So I called the guy, "Hey, Jason, this is Doug Cook." You know how Doug's voice. "Why don't you come down here and do some adjunct teaching?" Doug's not this country, but I can't ever get the pitch of Doug and do it without it sounding Southern. He goes, "You got to start somewhere. Come down here and start adjuncting," which was really great because my last exit interview with Ken Little, who was on my committee, he said, "What do you plan to do next?" And I said, "You know what?" I said, "I love making art, and I really found that I like teaching." And I said, "I would love to go teach at a school like the one that I grew up in at UTM." I said, "Small student base, you got room to build, that's not figured out yet." I didn't want to go to a big school where everything was figured out and you're just kind of running through the cogs. You can really build here, and it's kids like me. I'll know how to talk to them. I'll know how to I'll understand them a little bit better. And so I did 2 or 3 years adjunct, and we had a year where we had Obama's stimulus money. And that was great. Doug got to full-timing. And then we grew. I think this is how this all worked, Lynn. If I'm wrong, you can tell me. He's like, "Jason, that's not how none of this worked." But we kind of grew, and we had enough people to support a foundations position, which then meant I had to apply for the job I'd been doing for 5 years, which is agony because you have to go through the whole hiring process, and got it. And, I've been here since 2005, so almost 20 years. But, it was Doug, and Doug and Lane, Dave Macbeth, and I come down when I'd see Carol. They were always great in checking in with me. Lane would send me an email every 3 weeks, and sometimes it wouldn't be "How's grad school going?" He'd just send me an email. I was like, "Do you like scuba diving?" Because if you know Lane, this makes total sense for Lane. I'm like, "No, okay, good luck painting this week." It'd be something that random because Lane had a way of tilting the world on its side and looking at it. But this is me with some UTM students. And so, okay, now we'll get into what the whole talk's
So here we go
about.
to the whole thing about scholarship.
Yeah.
So I know people in this room who have tenure in different departments, and I've seen tenure packages, and stuff goes in a little box, and there's folders. What does an art professor do when they go for promotion or tenure? How do you prove that you're a scholar that's equitable to other people in this institution?
Well, okay, I'll talk about it generally what we're supposed to do, and then specific for art. And then I have all this on the board you can read, which just kind of explains kind of more the art side of it. But Gerald Ogg, who I did one of my first meetings with, when I got full time, sat me down and talked about the three-legged stool. And if everybody knows about the three-legged stool, imagine a stool, Jason, and there's 3 legs, and one's teaching, one's service, and one's scholarship. And you got to have 2 of those legs be strong. He goes, but ideally, make sure the stool works. And I was like, gotcha. And so for us, it's a mix of like, you're teaching, like, and this goes in like class reviews, student evaluations, what you're doing with your students, if you're doing extra stuff with them, and then it's scholarship. So for artists, it's showing and exhibiting our work. It's winning awards or different kind of things for your work. It's having your work published in magazines or books or journals or newspapers. And, obviously with service, that most of that is what we do with like serving on committees and things like that. But, and I do that stuff too, but I always wanted a lot of mine to be student related. And I'll say this, I'm a big proponent of like student organization advocacy and stuff like that, mainly because I was a very selfish student, when I was in school. I wanted to work on my stuff. I wanted to like focus on my shows and my exhibits. And then I wanted to be with my friends. And my friend Clint Riley talked me into it. He goes, if you know Clint Riley, I'm going to be the VAS president, Stouty, and you be the vice president, and I know you're kind of self-absorbed, so you just show up. And I said, I'm window dressing. He goes, you're the window dressing, I'm the beard. I was like, okay, cool. So, and then that's kind of how we did it. But we would start doing projects, and the more I went to grad school and was in San Antonio, and San Antonio is the perfect picture of this. You have to learn, to be a good artist, you have to have a community that supports it. If you're not invested in building the community around it that supports it, you're just walking around going, me, 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 me. And so by the time I started coming back teaching, and one of the things you realize is, here's the things I want to do, here's what we have, here's what we don't have. How do we move our students with what we want to do to get to that place, and how do we find the resources to do it? And then in the meantime, when you're doing all that and you're teaching, you've got 3 months in the summer, you better be making scholarships. So for me, I paint and draw, pretty much year round. Sometimes I just kind of like look at things, and that's kind of how I make work, is I'll look at things and then I'll start remembering them wrong. And then when I start to remember them wrong, that's when I draw them, because that's actually what makes it mine. The getting it wrong through me is what kind of makes it my thing. So, but every summer, it kind of goes through and talks about, so for us, it's showing and exhibiting. There's all types of shows. There's solo shows or museum shows or institution shows, which are the biggest. There are juried group shows, which basically means a juried show is a peer-reviewed show by a professional. So I think I'm in 6 shows right now, and they're all over the place. But one of the ones I just got in, it's like, congratulations, here you got in the show, it was juried by somebody, and they have to have credentials in the field, so it'd be like, getting a journal published. It's the same kind of thing. And the numbers are staggering because it's competitive. So if you get a journal published, I don't know how competitive that works and what the numbers are, but for a lot of these exhibits, they're like, hey, we had 400 artists submit for this exhibit, which means each one of them submitted 3 things. So you're talking about 1,200 works. We picked 42. So what's the percentage on that? So, it's got to be under like 8%, right, or something like that. So, you're basically putting yourself in that game. But also, too, and I tell the students this, that being an artist is a long game. It's staying around. It's surviving. Because a lot of people, I've met so many artists that 2 years out, they were fantastic. 5 years out, they're not doing art anymore. Or you've never heard of them, or you've never seen them again. Because it just grates on you how much rejection there is. But you have to kind of be ambitious about continuing to just put yourself out there and put your stuff in it. So, and the older you get, the more you stick around, the shows come easier to you. You know how to use them. You know how to maximize your resources. You know what shows are fit for you and what jurors are fit for you. You know that, if I take that painting right there, I probably don't need to show it with the West Lafayette Women's Watercolor Society because I'm not doing that work, right? Or I don't need to show, that's not what they're looking for. That show doesn't fit. And when we were kids, I didn't know. I would try to put it in anything and not understand the rejection of it. But that's kind of what we do. And then from that, too, you get in books, magazines, and then sometimes there's awards, scholarships, purchase prizes, and how you get your work in. So these are some shots of kind of like how I work in the summer. So I have a couple of tables, and a lot of time I just work in our painting studio at school. I have to be up here anyway working on stuff. We do a guitars art exhibit at the city, and we do other things, and sometimes we do tours. So I'm kind of up here working, and if I have to do something, for our department, I'll just be around. So, and when I work usually on 30 paintings at a time, 20 to 30, somewhere in there. And what I do is I just rotate them so everything feels new by the time it comes back around. And for me, only really having 3 months of semi-uninterrupted time, that's about how it fits in. So I'll show some pictures of some solo exhibits. This is the one I just had at Union University, and this is a smaller space, and this is in my room alone with everyone. And this is me, and part of the things sometimes you do is you do what we're doing right now is you go give a talk about all this stuff, and you either talk about the body of work or you talk about being an artist, and sometimes when you go, they want you to come by and do studio visits, which are actually my favorite thing because you get to sit down and meet new artists and talk about it. And there's all kinds of different solo shows too. This is actually at the B&A airport last year where you get, it's a nice kind of thing where you get a little money, so it's a good gig. I tell a lot of artists to do this. My friend Donna Woodley told me about it. You basically go, they give you around $800, they keep your paintings for there, and they have made in the new B&A airport these really, really great, I mean, ignore this guy that looks like he died over here. They made these really beautiful art spaces, and the guy that was running it, it's a whole art production firm that works for the airport that puts it on. It is super professional. And he walked me out and he showed me this whole field. He goes, this is where we're building the whole new wing to do European flights. And he goes, we're going to have 5 new spaces for artists out there. So Tennessee, which has been primarily a music city, is really starting to get invested in the visual arts. And so this is a really great thing. And you can kind of see, there it goes around, and they kind of pull around the room. And I really like my spots. Some of the spots I feel like are a little bit better than others, but and that's a detail shot. And this is the thing where I kind of got to keep my promise to myself. I got to do this show in 2020 at Murray State, and Mike Martin, who's the gallery director over there, called me and he goes, do you want to come show at Murray? And I was like, yes, this is how. He goes, we have a spot on the upstairs, or you can do the half gallery. And he goes, I guess you could do the whole floor. He goes, but no one really does that because we usually only put big group shows in there. I was like,
no one really does that.
Yeah, and I said, I can hold that space. He goes, you'd have to have 50 or 60 pieces. I was like, I've got 73 pieces that could go in that space. So he came over, and I didn't put the picture in because I didn't want to feel goofy of him climbing in his little car, like stacking. Mike Martin is like one of the best, show guys, gallery guys ever. But watching him pack a car is one of the most fascinating things ever because he can squeeze in and get in places I can't get in. I can barely get in most doorways. He can get in there and ninja around, and he had things just kind of juxtaposition. So, and he made this show. I mean, this will kind of show just how big the space is. And one of the things I always loved about this gallery, especially the first time I walked in when I was 18, is that it has this black kind of marble floor, and it shows off these paintings.
Look at that.
Yeah, and the paintings off the floor just look fantastic. So, but I think we ended up having.
That is a very big space.
It's a big space, yeah. So it's a survey of work from 2015 to 2019. So it's basically, and he didn't pick all of it. He just went through and picked what he thought was the best stuff, and then arranged it.
Did you do a talk there as well then?
We didn't because we were still on the back end of COVID.
Oh, right.
So what I did was a Zoom, and Zoom talks were kind of great because I could sit in my office and kind of do it. But also, you can watch people doing other things because they leave their camera on. So one guy was cooking and chopping onions, and he would look up and nod. And my brother Greg in Louisville got on, and he was watching it, and he would look in the thing and go, proud of you, bro. And about 45 minutes, he would also fall asleep, and I'm like, wake up, bro. So it's kind of, you could see all this going on, but that's how we did it. And I had to do 2 talks like that. I had to do that talk through a Zoom, and I had to do this talk at Lyon University because they were still, and this is my wife, I always call her, she's the go to the show because Amanda's probably put up just as many shows or helped install or drive show than any other art person I know. So we got to go do that with me and her, and it was fun because we hadn't hung a show in a while. So she was really knocking it out. We were having fun there. And this is, once again, any picture where you get to see Clay without the mustache is pretty great. But I spent a lot of time with Clay. But this is really how good our students were. This is the same body of work, but it kind of traveled around. So one time, if you have a really good packet of artwork or you have a real good exhibit, you can shop it around to a lot of galleries. And so this show actually got picked up and was maybe shown by 5 places. Oh, nice. So 2 or 3 galleries, and then 2 or 3 academic institutions and 2 galleries. So we would just all meet up, and we had really great students at the time, and kind of like now, they would show up, and you're like, hey, Stout's going to show that, and then we would show up and we would go. And the great thing about this picture, if I remember both these pictures, is this shows you a little something about all these kids in these pictures are out doing something now. And most of them creative. I got jobs. They were really great here. They gave a lot back to the university when they were here. So it's just kind of like building and investing back in that community. And then the other thing too is group shows. Like if you're in these big national group jury shows, and I picked the ones where like my art got to be the featured thing, and I'm not just.
I was going to say, is your painting always featured at the
No,
beginning
no,
of
no.
all
Sometimes
shows?
it's in corners by a pipe, and or by like the fire hydrant or the axe. And sometimes you'll get a picture from the show. I showed Clay one a couple weeks ago. I was like, man, look where this painting's at. I was like, oh gosh, I don't know if I can do this again. This is terrible. And so I mean, you're at the mercy once you ship, and then you're shipping them. I mean, 90% of the shows that I'm in, I don't get to see. I get it from pictures or videos, or even if you win a best of show, like, hey, you won a best of show. That's great. Mail that check. And and they do. Most of the time they do.
So I mean, as a sidebar there, what is the prize? What is the check? I mean, is it $100? Is it 10 grand? Is it $1 million?
It depends on like the size of the show. I mean, sometimes there's little monetary things, but it's a theme or a topic that I really like. A lot of the work, it's like if it's either a genre or a topic that I like, or if it's juried by somebody who the juror's caliber is something that's really strong or impressive, and I want them to see my work, I'll put it. And sometimes, like, it's not your work doesn't fit the show or doesn't really fit like what they're looking for, or too, the demographic. Now, the great thing about being in a postmodern is there are shows and exhibits for everything now. They're not just general like bring your best pieces, or they're so specific, so you can have very, very different nuanced artists. And I mean, you could take anybody, and then like you could go find right now 10 shows that are specific to the work that they make. And that's a great thing, whereas when we were growing up, you had to really hunt to find any shows at all. And so that's the great thing about being an artist now. Plus, the other thing is you guys will never have to deal with slides. You have no idea how painful it is labeling slides over and over. I can tell you grad school alone was awful. So these are a couple more. And then these are some show catalogs. This is New American Paintings, which is a really hard publication to get in. So I was pretty ecstatic when I got in that. And this is Waging Peace was a teaching political art show they did at Florida State University, and they actually used part of the show to design children's programming for 2 years around the exhibit for teaching political art, which is pretty cool. And then that's my show catalog, which you can still buy on my website for $20 at thejasonstout.com. So
could you repeat that website?
Yeah, thejasonstout.com, $20 there. And these are two other show catalogs.
The Ohio State University?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, my sister came up with that name, but it's actually funny. There's a graphic designer in Texas, and he has the same name, and people get us confused all the time. Our work is not alike, but he emailed me and he goes, I keep getting emails for you. And I said, I've gotten some for you. And he's like, ugh. He said, I saw you're now the Jason Stout. I said, I didn't mean that for you. My sister came up with this to help separate us. He goes, well, that's fine. So it was about 12 years ago. And then sometimes out of this, when you combine all this teaching and service and scholarship, you have the ability to win some of these awards. And I've been real fortunate to, I've been surrounded by, coming here, one, great students, a super supportive institution. UTM has really been great about letting me do certain projects, letting us pick up new things that we hadn't done before, helping me find resources. There's other departments on campus that are like, hey, do you have kids that can do this, or can LSA come do this project with us? We just got done painting ornaments for the chancellor that he gives out for his thing, and last year we did 200, and this year we did 100. 100's a lot easier to pull off than 200, but and I've had really supportive chairs the whole time I've been here. Doug Cook first, and then Dr. Carol Eckert, and now Sarah. So
did I see Carol here tonight?
Yeah.
Carol's in the back.
I told you I'd sneak you in a picture. There you are. Look at you right there.
I think I saw Sarah here tonight as well.
Yeah.
So.
Sarah's probably by Jeff somewhere there. Yeah.
And you've got a couple of deans here, I think, too, that have been involved.
And Lynn, of course. Yeah. I'm trying to work my way up, and and when Keith was here, we did projects together, and so these are like some of the awards, and it's cool. And this is when I went to Cunningham. I was really happy about that. That was always a big goal, because Cunningham's a really big thing, and a lot of the people that had won the Cunningham before were like teachers that I admired on campus. I think the longer you teach at a place, the longer, even if it's not your discipline, you become fans of other teachers on campus. And I've been really fortunate enough to be close to some of the people. And these are younger faculty too. I have a lot of younger faculty that they're coming. I'm like, you know who's doing a good job over there? Maury Carter. And I don't know if Maury's here. I didn't see Maury tonight, but I always brag about it because we work on the switch together. So I'm real proud of what Maury does, and like we're friends with what I call the Van Nappos, and I think Dan's a great teacher, and I try to get people. Oh, there he is. There's the Van Nappos right there, and there's a ton of them, and like I have art kids that. I have a group of art kids right now that, for some reason, sometimes struggle with history. I'm not going to call any names, but like I can pick up the phone and call Dan McDonough and be like, Dan, what do they need to do? And he'll say, here's where they're at, and we can talk. And so we have great faculty like that too, and that's part of the reason I was pressed about it. On that same day or that same weekend, my son Grayson Stout got first place painting in the Weakley County Arts Can Show for his plant monster back there, which blew critics away. So I thought that was really
maybe
special.
A round of applause for Grayson.
Yeah, where's Gray? Is he asleep? Look, he was like, wake up, little boy. That was for you. And then, like, we're almost at the end, so I'll talk about one of the things, too, is we talked about service. And these are a lot of the people that I've got to work with that kind of inspire me to serve. So, Jim and Anna Clark do a ton of work in the community. And I've known Jim and Anna, like, since I was a little kid because her daughter Emily and I went to school together. And, of course, Dee's not with us, but Dee was one of the most supportive people in anything I did. Would show up and, hey, Jason, what do you got going on? Okay, I'm going to run, and she'd be off. But, if I needed like a contribution or a check or a donation, it's like 50 and under because, she got hit up all the time. But Dee was always really great. And David Bloat and George Daniels, Dr. D is kind of my model for how to be a good student organization advisor. And, of course, David Bloat, I've worked with Dave with a bunch of projects and known since I was kids, great. And then the queen being Lynette Waxter, who couldn't be here tonight, but I do a lot of stuff with her in the city. And, the application of that is, the student group that I get to work with, formerly Visual Arts Society. So trying to make things right, getting to be the advisor for LSA, just, I get to, like, put back the hours and the time that I should have spent as a student trying to give our students, and I think that's the thing as a teacher. We're just trying to get them where we're at faster than I was. I want our students to be great, but like at 20, I want you to be further along than I was at 20. At 21, I want you to be further ahead. So, and these are some of our projects we do. We do a bookstore mural every year. We did the book benches in this library, so if you've seen them, the LSA did that. And Carol, you're back there again. Snuck you in twice. And this is the Fraser Book Bus project. It was something really cool because my son lives in Book Bus, and we got to do the designs for this. So we had a bunch of great LSA officers and team members work on this and get it on. And now it's, if you've seen it going around, these are UTM students that made and designed this. And there's our homecoming tent stuff for this year and our can sculpture. And these are some of our other projects. And this is some of our development of our student leadership, which I'm really proud of. And it talks a little bit about, some of the awards that LSA has been able to receive. And, every year we keep trying to up the ante with finding a good balance. And I think that's kind of like at the end, that's what the whole thing is about is, you have to find a way to balance out what you want to do as a scholar, for me as an artist, with also what you want to do with service for working people. But also, too, I get home at night, I still have to take up the trash and, hey, I need the lotion on the feet. It's been a rough day. Yes, I have to find the balance to be a good dad. I'm about to coach Pee Wee basketball next week. And I'm excited. I'm a little terrified, too, because I'm like, oh, boy, what's this going to be like? So
ask him about the Pee Wee basketball draft if you want to really get into the
well, we're on a live stream, and I don't want to tell any of the coaches, but I dominated that draft. That's all I'm going to say. So, did I answer all your stuff?
I think we got where we wanted. You didn't mention, though, that you've added one more accolade, and that's that you are the 2024 Fall Featured Faculty Scholar.
I am, yeah.
You
I
are.
am.
And,
I am very proud to do that.
Dr. Cavalier, I don't think could be here tonight, but he sent along his greetings on that accolade as well, so you can add that.
He must have took the good sandwiches with him. I noticed we just had cookies back there.
Stuff, yeah. So let's put our hands together just for a quick thank you. And then I think we have time for a couple of questions. I don't have a handheld mic that I want to walk around, so I'll just have Jason repeat any questions. Are there any questions from the audience? Oh, come on, don't be shy. I thought that guy was going to ask a question. Right
oh,
there.
no. Yeah. Don't give him a mic.
I know the question was going to be, is your work derivative, right? Great. Well, you dodged my question about what's the financial aspect of being an artist? I mean, do you sell paintings like this?
Sure.
What is a painting like this?
Sell one right now to you.
Yeah.
You buy it?
What would something like that go for? I mean, I just don't know.
It's different when you're okay. So when I showed with the gallery, I had to count for my gallery. When I showed with them, took 50%. A lot of people are like, "Whoa, that is a standard gallery," or it was then. Now, I mean, physical brick and mortar space galleries like that, there's not as many. They're hard to say, especially COVID. COVID really knocked out a lot of the physical galleries in Tennessee. So when I was showing with Dana, I also showed with a gallery briefly in Memphis for 2 years, and then I was showed with a guy in Chattanooga for 2 years. And so that's usually the standard commission. So when you're showing at those galleries, you kind of accommodate and bump your prices up there because gallery usually brings in like a higher price buying clientele. When I was a student, I would sell work, and this is kind of how I kind of help students price their work by saying, like, look, you're not selling to an audience that you have yet. You're selling to build an audience. You need to get what you want for your work, but you need to sell it at a price point to where you can build an audience with you as you move up. And that's always kind of been a thing that I mean, I can't tell you how many people bought paintings from me that were just people that we were friends with in our 20s and up to our 30s. But then what happens is, as you start to develop as an artist and you kind of make it and survive longer, that friend group that you grew up with, that you did all your goofy high school and college stuff with, and you did all that fun stuff, they're in their jobs. They're professionals by that point. And not only that, they're buying a house. They're starting a family. And the first thing they're thinking of, well, we got to put something on the wall. Well, I've known this goon for 15, 20 years. Why not call him? And my work's not for everybody. I mean, it's not super decorative, especially some of the real aggressive stuff. But I think you make a price point that you think's fair for like where your station is as an artist at the time and what you've done. And I've let things go, and I usually donate one piece a year to a charitable cause or something like that. You have to balance that because otherwise you'll give all your stuff away too.
So you've made your first million. That's the hard one.
Yeah.
And you're working on the second.
Amanda's here, right?
Yeah.
You said me, and she heard shoes. That's how that works.
No. Yeah. Well, any last questions before we break up? Well, great. I want to thank. Oh, there's a question in the back there. Oh, I think I know that person.
Hi. Oh, there's Mari Carter. Good.
So this is maybe an expected question, but who are the artists that you return to again and again? Whether you're in sort of a creative slump, where you're looking to broaden, your perspective on something, who are just those titans that you go back to again and again?
So the question for those that might be online, the question was, who are the artists that Jason returns to for inspiration, or who are they?
It's changed so much. If it was 19, 18, 20-year-old me, it would be everything that happened between 1900 and 1942. Everything from like Cubism to Surrealism to Abex to pop, that kind of canon. If I tell you now what I look at a lot of Vermeer. This is weird. I mean, just compositionally. I look a lot of Dutch masters like Peter Claes, was a still life painter, who was a Vanitas painter. I just spend hours looking at those pictures now, and this was something that 20-year-old me was not interested in at all. But there's a sophistication, and this is such an academic sentence here. There's a sophistication and stuff that is so complex, it's boring, and you don't realize, how good it is till you get out of your own coolness state to really start to break it down and study it and look at what they're doing and how they put it together and the complexity of it. I look at a lot of weird, random, older stuff that I never thought, and lately I've been looking at a lot of early, unpopular, low-budget printed comic books for the flat coloration and the simplicity in the design and draftsmanship. The people that drew them could get so much out of like 15 or 20 moves. And I'm more, as I get older, into like the economy of what somebody does, meaning that, they can get like 1,000 things out of 6 moves versus doing 1,000 things to maybe get like 6 kind of transitions in a painting. And so it's really odd. And sometimes you just know. So like, something's good. This is like kind of as a teacher too. You hear it, you don't know, but you just know. So Talene, I'm going to pick on you real quick because you'll like this. So we were doing our figure drawing stuff, and I had our model was out for the first half of the hour this week because she's they're at something else academically. And so they're doing these journal assignments where they have to do these different viewing distances with people in spaces. And I look over, and Talina's got this drawing, and Talina's right here, of like 3 of her friends, and there's one of them, there's the other one, all sitting in a room, and she's used a little bit of what she's got from a class, but also a little bit of what she came in with. And I just instantly saw it. I was like, do you know how good this is? And got excited, and this is 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'm up here, and, getting excited and pumped up, and Talina's like low-key down here, and almost like, you're embarrassing me, stop. But, I mean, sometimes you just see something, and it's maybe the time in which you saw it. The great thing about any kind of painting is when you go see it again every year, you're like, man, I just experienced it a different way. The painting is exactly the same. You've changed. So there's a lot of things that I looked at I was 20. I thought, this is the greatest thing ever. I look at it now, I was like, this is awful. And there's a lot of things I would have passed by the books up here and never looked at, that now I'm like, now that's something, isn't it? So it really changes. My Titans are very flexible lately. I would just say that. So it's a good question, though.
Great. Well, my general rule of thumb with presentations is that at about an hour, everybody starts to get itchy in their seats. So I think we're going to wrap up things here. I know that Jason would be more than happy to chat with folks here, answer additional questions. But if you would join me again one more time to thank Jason, our featured faculty scholar.
Thanks. Thank you. Lisa, cheer.